You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
Welcome to this episode of the Business of Practice podcast, where we focus on the business and human sides of equine veterinary medicine. In this episode, we're going to talk to Dr. Nina Mouledous about plugging insurance gaps for equine veterinarians. I'm your host, Kim Brown, editor of Equine Management. The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you in 2023 by CareCredit. Dr. Mouledous is a graduate of the Louisiana State University School of Veterinary Medicine, and she's a Trust Veterinarian for the AVMA Professional Liability Trust, which most of us know as PLIT. She joined the trust in 2008. In her role, Dr. Mouledous speaks to AVMA members insured through the PLIT-sponsored programs. She answers questions related to malpractice allegations and practice situations. She reviews professional liability claims, and she assists in the defense by identifying experts and appraiser and advises insurance brokers and underwriters about new developments in veterinary medicine. In addition, Dr. Mouledous represents the PLIT at various veterinary conventions and through speaking engagements each year, and she contributes to PLIT publications. Welcome, Dr. Mouledous.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, we're so happy that you're here today because what you don't know can hurt you, and that's especially true if you're a practicing veterinarian who doesn't have the proper insurance. And I wish I'd kind of been able to record some of the conversations we were having before we came on the air today, because Dr. Mouledous has some great advice. And I'm going to mention one of them even before we start. If you bought your insurance when you got out of vet school and you haven't gone back and looked at it, and you might be earning a little more money or having a larger practice, that's also a time to go talk to her. But we will come back to that. So I just want to start with, what insurance gaps are the most common for equine veterinarians? What are your must-haves?
Okay, well, that's a loaded question, and well, I'll try and I know insurance is such an exciting topic. You know, it's kind of like writing a term paper or paying your taxes. Nobody really wants to do it, but it is a necessity, right?
Yes.
And you know, we are here at PLIT to help our veterinarians get through these complicated questions. And I like to put insurance into 4 different buckets to help everyone understand, because there are different types of insurance. And we all know that we really need insurance for every step we take in life and every breath we take, literally, because we live in such a litigious society here in the United States. But we can break it up into 4 buckets: personal insurance, professional insurance, business insurance, and employee-related insurance. And so for personal insurance, that protects you personally as a person. And this would include life insurance, disability income insurance, and health insurance, to name a few. And for a professional, for a veterinarian coming out of vet school who has spent a lot of money, blood, sweat, and tears, and has invested in their profession, the most important personal insurance you want to make sure that you have as soon as you become a doctor and that you keep as long as you are practicing is disability income. And I like to call it your paycheck insurance. And this would provide 60% of your income to you if you would become disabled and were unable to practice. And there are certainly different types of disability income insurances, but here at the AVMA Trust, you know, we've been providing this type of insurance since 1950, and we know exactly what veterinarians need. And, you know, if you have any questions, if you want us to look at what you have now, we'll be happy to do that. But the one of the important gaps that we do see is that veterinarians do not have disability insurance, or they wait too long to get it, and then they may have pre-existing conditions and they may be uninsurable. So you want to get it. We're fresh out of school when you're young and healthy. And for instance, with the AVMA Life disability insurance, there is no underwriting when you come out of school. There's no medical questions asked. It's a grad guarantee program that we have. And so I think with the disability income insurance, number one, you want to make sure you have it. And number two, you want to make sure that you keep increasing it as you earn more money, so that if you do become disabled 20 years out of school, you will still be able to get a check comparable to what you were making. And along with that, the other that I call that a non-negotiable insurance, disability income or paycheck insurance. The other non-negotiable to protect veterinarians, to protect their profession and their ability to practice, is professional liability or malpractice insurance. And this is insurance that would protect the veterinarian, their reputation, their assets, and their ability to practice if a client alleged that they were negligent. Doesn't necessarily mean you were negligent, but even if someone alleges you were negligent, this would trigger your policy and protect you. And along with the malpractice insurance, you want to make sure that you add the veterinary license defense endorsement, which would be triggered if someone would file a board complaint against you. So there's a lot of things that can happen if a client is unhappy with you as a doctor, if they feel like you didn't cure their horse, or that you were negligent in giving an injection or something. Let's say they can file a malpractice claim and demand financial compensation, or they can file a board complaint, and this is a complaint to the state board against your license. And you can't practice veterinary medicine if you don't have a license. So the non-negotiables are disability income insurance, professional liability or malpractice, and the veterinary license defense endorsement. So that is for any veterinarian, okay, needs that. Now, for those of you that are practice owners, we can pretty much divide equine practice into three categories. Probably the most common are mobile or ambulatory practitioners that don't have a standalone building. Number two would be equine practices, usually referral centers that do have a building, and maybe they don't have field services. And then number three would be a facility that had both. They had a standalone, building, clinic, hospital, and a field service department. And so there's important business insurance coverages that you're going to want to make sure that you have, that many people don't realize that they need. And it can be a little overwhelming. And you want to make sure that you have an insurance professional to help you make sure that you have all of these different types of coverages, right? So for any business owner, you're going to want to have a BOP, or what we call a business owner's package. And we call it a package because it's a 3-in-1. It provides coverage for your building, it provides coverage for all the contents in your building, and it provides coverage for third-party injuries or non-employee human injuries if someone would slip in the parking lot and sprain their ankle, okay? So, and then for mobile practitioners, you also need a BOP, what we call a mobile BOP, for your business as a mobile practitioner and your vehicle and your equipment, and for any third-party injuries.
The Business of Practice podcast is brought to you by CareCredit. CareCredit keeps equine veterinarians at the heart of care by providing horse owners with simple, budget-friendly financing options. By bridging the gap between cost and care, CareCredit supports healthy financial relationships between veterinarians and their clients. It can help them move forward with care a horse needs whenever and wherever it's needed.
Do you have any questions so far? I know I'm kind of over giving you a lot of information. Just want to do a little check before I go into the 5 key endorsements that you want to make sure you have on your BOP.
No, I think what this always tells me is I'm one of those people that I love insurance. It's to me, it's going to the casino and knowing which number is going to win. And you may not win a lot of money, but you're not going to lose it. That's the point. This is what protects you. And I'm just really a big insurance person. So I'm glad that you're going through and explaining all these. And that's another thing is I think a lot of veterinarians forget when they come out of vet school to practice, they are small business owners. And they have all the same liabilities as the guy who runs the drugstore or the person who runs the Minute Mart. They have
Exactly.
employees, sometimes they have vehicles, they have content. So, it's important that they talk to a professional. So anyway, let's go on.
Okay, so you said yes, veterinarians that are practice owners, whether it's mobile or a clinic or both, they are a small business owner and they have the same risk and liabilities as any business owner. However, as we know, in equine practice, we do have some unique aspects about our business that are totally different and are unlike any other business. And I want to go through some important key endorsements that you want to make sure you have, whether you're a mobile practitioner or you own a practice, a clinic, or both, that many standard insurance companies do not have in their BOP, their business owner's package. And the AVMA PLIT came to realize these gaps. To back up a little bit, the PLIT started back in 1962 providing professional liability insurance, malpractice, and it was so popular that veterinarians started to come to us for their other insurance needs, specifically their business insurance needs, because they weren't getting the coverage that they needed. And with that, we have provided this unique business coverage for veterinarians that plugs these holes. So what you want to do when you have your business, when you purchase business owners insurance, or if you already have it, and during your audit, you want to make sure you have these 5 endorsements, which are commonly not provided in standard insurance policies: animal damage to equipment, spoilage coverage, mobile coverage of equipment, hire non-owned auto, and business interruption. Now, I'm going to go through each one of these individually to explain to you what they mean. Most standard insurance companies do not provide coverage to equipment if it is damaged by an animal. Okay, that's kind of important for veterinarians, right? Just a little bit. And so examples that we have and that we cover, that claims that we get all day long, and why we started this particular endorsement, would be if a horse accidentally kicks your expensive DR plate, right? Those are like $5,000. And what if your insurance company didn't provide coverage for that because they don't provide any damage that's caused by an animal? So that's a very important endorsement for equine practitioners, whether you're mobile or standalone. The second is spoilage coverage, and this is a big one. One of the other reasons that we got into the business insurance were that veterinarians were calling us upset that their insurance company would not reimburse them for the losses in their refrigerators when they would have an electrical outage. So you know how much we have in our refrigerators, whether it's on our mobile unit or in our clinic. We can have tens of thousands of dollars worth of inventory, such as vaccines and blood products and other drugs that need to be refrigerated. And imagine if your refrigerator goes out and your insurance company says, oh, we have a spoilage exclusion. We don't cover perishables. So what this was, the reason why standard insurance companies have this exclusion is because it's hard to put a price tag. This was meant for like homeowners insurance. It's hard to put a price tag on everything you lose in your refrigerator, like a turkey and a half a gallon of milk and a half a dozen eggs,
Right.
And so they just exclude it because it's hard to put a price tag on that. But when it comes to veterinary practice and what we have in our refrigerators, it becomes very important. So you want to make sure that your business, your BOP, has spoilage coverage. Now, while I'm talking about spoilage coverage, I also want to mention on the professional liability policy, the loss of semen and embryos in liquid nitrogen tanks is an exclusion on the malpractice policy. And it's something that it's very hard to get coverage for semen and embryo storage in the liquid nitrogen tanks. And those liquid nitrogen tanks love to fail. And the liquid nitrogen tank companies do not guarantee their product either. So you can I recommend doing both. You can add an endorsement to your animal bailey, which is hooked to your professional liability, to get semen and embryo coverage. So for those of you that are performing artificial insemination and you're storing semen, especially in liquid nitrogen tanks, or doing any kind of repro work where you're storing your product, semen or embryos, in liquid nitrogen tanks, you want to make sure you have the semen and embryo storage coverage. You can get up to $50,000 of coverage. But also, I'll tell you a little business owner secret. All of our business policies have the spoilage endorsement. And the definition of this endorsement is that if there's any loss of a perishable item, including biologicals, that is damaged due to a temperature change. So when the liquid nitrogen tanks fail, that is a temperature change, and the product in there is lost due to a temperature change. So if you have this spoilage endorsement on your BOP and you perform repro work and artificial insemination and your tank fails, it's going to be covered under your BOP.
That's great. Boy, that's one I never thought of.
Yeah, little business tip there for you. But I would recommend having both coverages just to make sure, because the spoilage endorsement, our carriers tell us, well, it really wasn't meant for that, but by definition. So we hold their feet to the fire. But, just as a backup, I would recommend having both types of coverage. So one of the questions I know you asked before, can you be overinsured? And in some instances you can, but not when it comes to semen and embryo storage. You can't be overinsured because it can be so hard to get coverage. Now, the third endorsement I want to talk to you about, which is more important for mobile practitioners, is mobile coverage of equipment. Now, that is another exclusion in standard business owners' policies where equipment is not covered when it is off-premise and in transit, because when equipment is in a vehicle and the vehicle gets in an accident and the equipment is going to get damaged. So insurance companies love to exclude things that are pretty much guaranteed. For instance, when the liquid nitrogen tanks fail, everything gets lost, 100% loss. When equipment is in a vehicle and there's an accident, it's most likely the equipment is going to get damaged. So they like to exclude things that they are high risk and they know they're going to have to pay out on. But you can usually buy them back with endorsements. But for the BOP that we provide for veterinarians, we bake it in, so it's already in there, so that your equipment is covered while it's in transit. Now, the other thing I want to talk to you about when it comes to mobile coverage of equipment is cash value. Oftentimes, or actually for standalone equipment in a building as well, most insurance companies will only provide cash value for your equipment loss. Now, we all know that, we have that old x-ray machine or that old ultrasound machine that we've had for 10, 20 years and still works fine. But if you had to replace that and your insurance company only gives you cash value, you're going to have to provide out of pocket to make that gap. Maybe you bought your ultrasound machine for $30,000, 10, 20 years ago, and now they're 50, let's say. You're going to have to come up with 20,000 to replace that piece of equipment to get back in business. And that's going to hurt. So you want to make sure that your insurance company is going to provide replacement value for your equipment and not cash value. Very, very important. And that's another reason, I'll tell you a little story, why we got into the business insurance business, is that veterinarians were calling us. They would have their pickup truck with their vet box on the back of the pickup truck. They've had this vet box for 20 years. They get in an accident, they roll their truck, and their auto insurance would only give them cash value for the vet box. And the vet box, they purchased it 20 years ago. And they didn't have the money to replace it. So this veterinarian's trying to get back to work, and they can't because they have to come up with another, 20,000.
Yeah.
I hope all that makes sense. I'll do a little
It does.
check. Do you have
that's some really good tips.
All right. Number 4, and this is a really unknown for many practice owners. Let me ask you, and I know you can't answer me because this is a recorded session, but how many of you have employees that run errands for the business in their personally owned vehicle? I'm probably thinking many of you are raising your hand, right?
I think there's probably a lot raising their hands.
Yeah. And this is a simple example of, maybe someone going out to pick up lunch for the team, and you're having a team lunch meeting and they get in an accident, or they go to the bank to make a deposit. That we can all come up with 1,000 different examples of employees running errands for your business in their vehicle. And so you want to make sure you have this endorsement. It's called Hire Non-Owned Auto. And again, this is something that we automatically bake into our business owner policy. And it protects the practice, and it covers employee drivers if they get in an accident during business-related errands. Now, the employee's car insurance will kick in first, but if it's a really bad accident and the employee's limits are exhausted, the company is at risk because it was a business-related errand. Okay, and this endorsement is going to pick up that gap. So let me give you an example to help you understand better. And there's a lot of business owners that don't understand this coverage. It's called Hire Non-Owned. Let's say you go out to a farm, to castrate 5 colts, and your tech meets you out there. It's early Monday morning, and you guys are getting ready to get to work and laying everything out, and you realize that whoever stocked your truck on Friday didn't put enough ketamine in your truck. So you send your tech back to the practice to pick up some more ketamine. She's in a hurry. They're in a hurry, because you're there ready to get to work, and they run a red light and have a terrible accident. Let's say the other driver is, permanently disabled, and the vet tech's personal insurance is going to kick in first, but we have, a severe human injury, 2 total vehicles, and the vet tech's personal insurance, has low limits. The practice is at risk, and this is going to kick in and protect the practice and plug in that gap. I hope that makes sense.
It does, and I never even thought about that. I mean, how many times does that happen every single week?
Yeah, every day probably, right? And practice owners just don't even realize that they're at risk. Now, the 5th endorsement that I want to make sure that everyone is aware about is called business interruption. Okay, and I know that this is one of my favorites because so many people don't realize that this is even a thing. But this provides coverage for any interruption in business that disrupts your daily routine. And it's usually physical damage, whether it's to your building or to your equipment, okay? And it could be, hurricanes, tornadoes, but it could be as simple as a broken water pipe in the practice that could shut you down for weeks. And for mobile practitioners, this could be an accident with your vehicle and you don't have your vehicle. It could be as simple as, again, a horse damaging your x-ray machine or your ultrasound machine, and you can't continue working, so you can't earn an income, and you have to wait for that new equipment to come in. So what this does is, and it provides your normal payroll. Let's say if the whole practice is affected, like you have a standalone building, it'll provide payroll expenses, not only for you, for your employees. It provides cleanup cost. It provides cost for transferring operations to a rented facility. It'll pay your mortgage. It'll pay for the lost income as a result of that interruption and any outside services. And so, and there's no gap, and there's no cap on it. And you want to make sure that you get the 12-month and not the 6-month. Now, for mobile practitioners, let me go back and use this example. You have a busy equine clinic and you specialize in sport horse medicine, and you radiograph horses every single day, right? And your x-ray machine gets kicked by a horse. You paid $60,000 for it. That was your actual cash value, 15 years ago. Now a new machine costs $85,000. So you're going to want to make sure you have that replacement cost that I told you about. And now you're unable to finish radiographs. You have 3 more patients to radiograph that day and a whole book of radiographs for the rest of the week. And you're unable to finish that work and earn that income. That's where this business interruption is going to kick in. And again, you're going to want to make sure that you have that replacement and you're not going to be able to get a replacement x-ray machine for another 10 days from the company. So that 10-day loss of not being able to perform radiographs is going to be reimbursed to you with that business interruption. So not only do we have 3 issues here, not only do we have business interruption because we can't take radiographs, but our insurance is going to pay for that, okay? We have damage caused by an animal, which we're going to want to make sure we have that endorsement, and we're going to want to make sure that we have that replacement cost baked into our business, our BOP, and not actual cash value to replace that x-ray machine we bought 15 years ago. All right.
Wow.
So animal damage to equipment, spoilage endorsement, mobile coverage of equipment off premise and in transit, non-owned hired if your employees are running errands in their own vehicle, and business interruption. These are 5 endorsements that equine practitioners, whether you're mobile or standalone or clinic in a building, that you must have in your business insurance on your BOP.
Well, I'll tell you what, you have covered a tremendous amount in a very short period of time. And I'm going to tell you all that just want to let you know that Dr. Mouledous said, I am going to be allowed to put her email address and contact information in the article on equimanagement.com that goes along with this podcast. So you can go to equimanagement.com, look for the Business of Practice podcast and look for this particular one, and there will be an article. And I'm going to have her contact information because some of these things, it's like I never thought about. And I know I've been around veterinary medicine for 40 years. So thank you for allowing us to do that. So what else is on the PLIT website for AVMA members and trust insured vets that folks may not know about?
Okay. Well, first, I just want to back up a little bit. We are the AVMA Trust now. Since I think 2 or 3 years ago, we have joined up with AVMA Life. So we do now have like two sides of two arms of the AVMA Trust, and they both websites, AVMA PLIT.com and AVMALife.com, have just a tremendous amount of resources for veterinarians. And for the PLIT website specifically, we do, you want to go to, there's just a lot of information on the website that you can poke around. But if you're interested in looking at any of the newsletters, we have equine specific newsletters under our library and education. And then we also have business insurance newsletters and a lot of safety alerts as well. So there's a plethora of information and species-specific content on the website.
Well, that is great. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate it, Dr. Mouledous, that you joined us today for the podcast. And thanks all of our listeners for joining us for the Business of Practice podcast. And a big thanks to our sponsor, CareCredit, for letting us have these discussions that are so important. And we invite you to visit equimanagement.com or your favorite podcast network to hear all of the episodes of the Business of Practice. And if you have any questions or suggestions, you can send an email to me at kbrown, that's the letter K Brown, at equinenetwork.com. Thank you for joining us.